saw him.
Yeah.
Call the meeting.
All right, want to get going? Calling to order the December 10th, 2015 meeting of the Stoughton High School Building Committee. First item on the agenda is public participation. It's a portion of the meeting that we set aside for people from the public to come and address the committee if they wish to. And as is sort of typical, we don't have anyone here to do that, unless there's someone hiding that I don't see. But
Scott.
Scott?
maybe you can just give us some practice public participation. Hearing and seeing nobody. So item 2, preferred schematic report and FAS meeting. That's
Well,
Tim, Carl, or Dom?
yeah, I'll start it. We did submit the preferred schematic report on December 1st. We have gotten some communication back and forth, and originally they were scheduling us for the facilities assessment meeting for January 6th, but Tim got them to December 16th, which works really good for all of us, I think. We just met with Julie just briefly to prep for that assessment, which is really, it's like a 20-minute presentation, which Carl, I think, will go through a little bit of. 8 to 10 minutes of Julie talking about the education program and how we developed it in 21st century learning, and then Carl taking over and how we dovetailed the ed program into the design of the preferred schematic. So, Carl,
this is the submission here. This is the town's copy. I don't know who wants to keep it, but Maggie, I don't know if you keep it in your office, but
I'm happy to keep it. I have many documents of at least that size. I will have another one.
there is also in each one, right? There's a electronic version too in the back here on a disc. So,
yeah, and
but quickly, the contents. The contents in here are kind of a recap of the process to date. Then they ask for if there's any update on the previously submitted information. And then we get right into how did the MSBA is more or less asking, how did we collectively evaluate the alternatives? And why is this the preferred option? And we put all the supporting documentation in there. So we have to show them the alternatives, show them the detail to them. Obviously, the cost estimates for each one are in there. And then on the preferred option, we resubmit with a little bit of updating the educational program. So the answers that we gave them previously when they asked questions are now incorporated in the ed program. We update that space summary. Remember the line by line, this form here that lists every space in the building and shows the total square footage. That's in there. We have some issues to talk about there a little bit. And then the floor plans, site plan, floor plans for the preferred option, and then the explanation as to why that's the preferred. So there's a lot of paper, I know, to do that, but it's all kind of spelled out as required.
When you say I keep it, do you mean that I bring it with us on the 16th? That
You don't need to. You might want to have it available.
Okay.
We've, submitted, what did we give them, 2 copies, Scott, I think?
The
MSBA?
no, one with the electronic.
One an electronic version, so
Yeah.
they obviously have it.
Can we get the electronic version
We're
to
just going to
Jamie?
talk about it. We're going to post
Okay.
it, yeah. So you want me to get it to Jamie? I can do that.
so she can, have something?
You can take
Your
it out.
town.
Well, we were
so-
also talking about posting it on, why don't we pass it down, on
School's website.
on the school's website, so people can take a look at it too.
Sure,
It'll be a
that'd be
big
great.
document, but we should post it.
You can put it on the Facebook page too. Well, it's electronically there.
Yeah.
The disc is in the back of the book.
Right.
So just take it out of there,
Yeah.
and you can use that to
That's what it's
give it to
about.
Jean
Yeah.
if she's going to post it. In terms of that meeting coming up next Wednesday, we've just started to put together the presentation for that. I could back up a little bit here. They limit us to 15 slides and 20 minutes in time. So we might use this slide as a way to show them the existing building. So that takes care of that image. We don't have to repeat that.
1938 cars in there or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can talk about how Stoughton hangs on to buildings for a century, you know, there. And I'm not even sure we'll have an agenda. That wastes one slide out of 15, but it's pretty brief what we want to talk about. As Dom said, we want, just to recap the ed program, they will have had a copy, and it gets distributed to the members who are there. There might be 4 or 5 board members at the MSBA, of the MSBA there as a subcommittee. They sit at the table. Then in the room all around the perimeter is the rest of the MSBA staff who are just there to observe. They generally don't contribute anything, but they're probably not allowed to talk. Because
You say in general they don't?
no, at this meeting, this meeting,
Can you put that on a slide? Mike has suggested you put that on a slide.
Wasn't sure what you said.
this meeting is intentionally for the members of the board to be able to have kind of a work session with the team and the district, as opposed to January 27th, the full board meeting. That's a more formal occasion, not really meant for give and take and interaction. So that's why they set up these subcommittee meetings. So they will have seen the ed program, and some of them, you know, one is with the Department of Education, and so it's pretty up on those things, obviously, and may have a few questions there. But others just want to be informed and have the opportunity to ask questions. So it's good to recap and sort of talk about the deficiencies with the existing building, why you can't offer the program, you can't do teaching and learning the way you'd like to do it, and then highlight a few of the things that make Stoughton special or make this you know, program distinctive and unique. And you know, we have these old slides here. We may condense this into 1 or 2 slides. I think we'll use this diagram too, because it does kind of translate well to the floor plan, and we can then justify why the selected option is the best one to meet the ed program. So we'll probably rearrange this so that floor plan, or at least the diagram, matches with the floor plan. This is just a placeholder to briefly talk about the existing conditions, to inform them, again, of some of the facilities deficiencies, some of the space deficiencies with the existing building.
Can you go back a couple?
Yes.
Sorry, Carl. Is that a special grass area for you, Julie?
That used to have a satellite dish.
Oh, you mean why is this fenced in?
I'm not sure what that was for. I'm sorry.
It's like detention.
It's for the bad children.
Ground-mounted
For the ghost.
for the veterinary program.
I just had to ask the question. I had no idea what that was.
Could we include a picture of the wall?
What did you say, you were there, Roberta?
We may substitute that one, right? That's a better case study. Then we can use this one again to explain how we, you know, narrowed down the options to 4, and how those are the 4 that we, you know, studied in depth. But we did look at other parcels in town. We looked at, you know, started with 4, narrowed it to 2. Likewise with the new construction, started with 4, narrowed it to 2. And then these are the criteria that we collectively developed to evaluate those. This is the format that we used. But you know, it's pretty apparent. The C2A has no red, you know, criteria, all green virtually, and clearly was the preferred option when we use those criteria to evaluate them. And cost is not an issue. We'll mention that, you know, when we did do the estimates. And then, you know, they want to understand the, you know, what is the preferred option. So we've got a new site plan. It's a little bit cleaner now and developed, but it's the same one you've seen before, just cleaned up a bit there to show the layout and the floor plans as well. Color coded now, kind of to show the function, you know, classrooms, science labs, service areas are colored similarly. And in this plan right now on the 3rd floor, it still shows the superintendent's office here. That's part of the discussion, but if it does go away, what we envision is literally turning that into a roof. No, that's green vegetation, Joel. We turned it into a vegetated roof. So at the end of this corridor, when you come up these stairs, you could have a window here looking out onto a vegetated roof. So, yeah. And then we have a couple 3-dimensional drawings to show them. The first one that shows the relationship of the new and the old, and maybe another overall view. And that's going to use up our 15 slides. So
Who's gonna make the presentation? No, maybe I ought to turn this on. Who's gonna make the presentation, Carl? Is it gonna be you only?
for this part of it,
Okay.
Tim, well, actually, MSBA's project manager will probably start off, Chris Alice.
Chris, Alice, yeah.
And then Tim maybe give a brief overview of the process to date and
Then we'll jump
key
to
members.
Julie.
And then Julie will talk about the education plan.
Okay.
And then I would talk about going through the alternatives and why this one is the best.
Okay.
And it's about 20 minutes that are given for us. And
No, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, introduction will be shorter.
If Chris Alice,
Hopefully
Chris
probably
Alice
be
touches on the.
6 or 8 minutes,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
my part would be 10 or 12 minutes.
if Chris does a lot, I'm not going to do a lot, really.
Is there any
I'm gonna turn it over to
expectation
you.
on the FAS about who should be showing up?
No.
Obviously, the architect and the OPM, anybody else?
And the
We're
district, they want
having-
somebody to
Oh,
be
yeah.
able to speak to the ed program.
Right, we,
So,
yeah, the way we had said it was Michael, and Maggie, and Julie are
Yeah.
coming.
Okay.
So,
And Don Carl.
Don Carl and Tim.
Tim.
Oh, so you're not.
DJ, are you gonna be there?
I may.
Yeah, it would be nice if you could, the chairman.
Well,
Chair.
I'll be there. Okay.
Drive. Pay for parking.
I'm taking the train.
The only issue, so on the schematic report and the FAS meeting, tonight's discussion on the superintendent's program is important because it changes our design and cost and some of the critical components. But the other thing that I'm waiting on from a response from the MSBA is they've commented about the auditorium. You know, because as we discussed, even though we went to their maximum square footage, but it still exceeds the maximum seat count that they have when you do their seat count ratio. And we also exceed, or we're right up against the stuff that doesn't relate to seats, like the stage and the storage and some of those.
yeah, this form is organized by category. You can see those green lines. These are classrooms, this is special ed, this is art and music. Well, in the auditorium category, in addition to, the area of the seats, there's also the stage, there's also dressing rooms, and there's storage. So in the auditorium category, there are those 5, control booth too for lighting. So there are those 5 lines. Previously, we were always focusing on the line about the seats, about how much space can this be and how many seats. And that's where we had the give and take. About 750 seats times 10 square feet is 7,500. And even though the district wanted 1,000 seats, after the preliminary submission and a little back and forth there, we did reduce it on this submission down to 7,500 square feet. Now they came back and said, oh, in addition, or not kind of in addition, but the stage that's proposed exceeds their guidelines, which we had already pointed out and explained previously. Because you have a big band, you need a big stage for the number of players there. And the other spaces, the storage, the dressing rooms, the control booths, all match up with their guidelines. But now they're saying, as Tim mentioned, the 750 seats is their maximum, but technically their guideline says, you should have up to 2/3 of the enrollment, which for this project would be 710 seats. But they'll allow 750 as long as the total of the whole category doesn't exceed the guideline. So we'd have to make cuts elsewhere, either in the storage or the dressing rooms or the stage, in order to keep the seat count up there. It's 1,000 square feet that has to be taken
I
up.
say get rid of the dressing room,
know.
they can go in the bathroom.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, actually.
So
But Carl,
it's tricky.
weren't we talking about you could fit 850 seats into that space?
We can still do that, 825,
Something.
something like that.
But that's in the
But that's
size
in
you
there
have
now.
now. Yeah.
That's in, if we keep it at 7,500 square feet.
What we're going to try to do is, because they were very clear about not even submitting on the bigger one, when the town was willing to possibly pay the difference. But I think now we're going to make that argument stronger, and hopefully in the strength of Julie's presentation about the importance of arts, that although it may not be eligible for reimbursement, that extra 1,000 square feet or whatever, which isn't a big deal, I mean, it's not a lot of money, we at least hopefully can get it, keep it in the program. So I think we are gonna, unless I hear differently from them, we're gonna submit with the program that Carl has in front of him and what's shown on the screen, and have this discussion at the FAS meeting. But it will come up at the meeting, obviously.
Does the band practice on the stage area? I can hear you.
They'll get yelled at. Currently, that's where they do all their practice.
That's what I figured.
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's the key difference between the seating and the stage area, at least,
right.
is
We have a
that
very
does get
large-
utilized.
Right, and we have a
whereas-
very large band,
yeah.
concert band, so,
Their key
and
problem
it
was
keeps
that
growing.
the seating space wouldn't be utilized enough to justify the cost.
mhm.
Whereas this is actually a pretty stark difference between the stage and
In the art and music section of this program,
Mm.
for the band room, which is right there, for the band room, right in their guidelines, it talks about 50 to 100 seats. Well,
Mm.
Stoughton's band is 120 players.
Mm.
So that's why we justified both a larger band room and a larger stage
Mhm.
there. And, you know,
Stoughton's award-winning band.
exactly.
I caution too, one of the biggest problems we have in schools is storage. You know, they're built like a 1950s ranch, and there's no place to put anything, and you start putting things where you're not supposed to, and then the fire people come in, and then, or you start buying these storage bins and putting them on the outside of the school and jamming things in, and then, you know, they're an eyesore, and then with a compact footprint, you don't really have that here. So I wish they loosened up a little bit and understood that.
Well, we're trying to clarify if what they're telling us is that it's this extra 1,000 square feet is just ineligible for reimbursement, or whether it's actually prohibited, and we should make everything smaller.
Or whether they may even allow us to be reimbursable because of the fact that, I mean, the stage, when it won't fit the actual band, is a different argument than this number of seats, I think.
But I think they figure things are cyclical. You know, you have a big band now, 7 years from now, the band may not be in
Yeah.
style to be in the band.
Yeah, well,
You know how
yeah.
things go.
They're pretty accommodating when you can show it in your ed plan. I mean, which we can. So we'll see how, I think we'll just have this discussion, but it will come up at the, you know, it will be part
The
of
other
it.
argument too, Maggie, probably is that you know, coming up from the grammar school, middle school, how many kids are involved in the music program.
Well, the thing that makes for a robust band program really is having it start for all the students at the elementary level. So we're very, very committed to keeping the feeder program, which starts band and full chorus at 4th and 5th grade, and that's why there's a big middle school band, and that's why there's a big high school band. So as long as you keep the feeder program in place, you're likely to have those kids, and we have no intention of cutting in those early
No,
grades.
I'm not saying to cut it, but I'm just
No, I
saying.
mean, but that's what we can
the
say
state's-
to
Yeah,
them.
but that's the state's argument.
But in the, in our high school, our band has never dipped, and the only time it did dip was when the high school was running a deficient schedule that didn't allow kids to actually fit band into their schedule. Now, we fixed that problem, and now the band is growing again, which I don't ever see it decreasing. It's such a strong program in Stoughton.
No, I'm not, I'm just being devil's advocate
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
But if
a
we
couple
support
other
it in
projects.
the structure, I think they'll understand that that will keep it
A
robust.
couple other projects where we're trying to, make these tough decisions, similarly, do we tighten up on this space or that space? We were able to make the argument that the stage is more of an educational space, you might say, than the seats. The stage is for the performers. It's it's part of their educational curriculum almost. Granted, the audience sometimes includes students, and they are learning something, but it's kind of easier to justify, you might say, somewhat shrinking the size of the audience, but keeping the performing space appropriate, because that's for students.
Yes, but then we're still looking at a situation where, in spite of the fact that it's an egregiously substandard building in so many ways, they're actually, what they're giving us in terms of a usable auditorium is less than what we have.
Yes, including
So
the
they're
stage too. Both the
less.
number of seats and the stage, unfortunately, in this proposed school are smaller than the existing.
And then I think that's what hopefully they'll listen to say, okay, while 1065 was much bigger than even the existing one at 900, but now I'm hoping that they'll be more receptive, because now they've seen, they knew 1065 was out there, so it's kind of like a negotiation, you know. But we'll have the communication with them.
So, Carl, what happened to the space that was taken off when we had to reduce the size of the auditorium?
This wing just
Okay.
collapsed. This space got smaller
Okay.
here, basically.
So end to end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because from a design point of view, this is kind of one block,
Mm-hmm.
and how it's connected to this block is a little bit loose, so we're able to tighten that up somewhat.
And what was it square footage wise?
I forget what that was. If it
That's
was,
okay. That's okay. I
think it was
was doing it in my head like a couple
close to
thousand square feet, maybe.
9,000. So it was like
9,000.
Yeah. So it was like, no, I mean the difference is,
Oh.
from 9,000 to 7,500,
so
so
couple-
1,500
yeah.
square feet.
I wasn't far off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
So we should make sure those who, you know, we'll read again the ed program, make sure we know what it's, because there's one particular board member who is going to have read it in detail and will have it tabbed and will, you know, be quite critical to just her way.
Tim, at the end of the FAS meeting, do they make a decision, or do we have to wait, or they
Well,
say
in my
goodbye in the
experience,
block,
they
or-
make comments, but then
Okay.
they actually tell you the staff will get back to you with sort of a recap. So they
Oh, they don't say, we're going to recommend this to the...
Oh, no,
executive-"
they won't do that. No, not at that point. They'll make comments about,
Okay.
you know, we'll get a good fee, you know.
But the reason the staff is there, basically, is to make sure that the comments get followed up
get
on
dealt with,
before it
right.
appears before the board.
Understood.
Yeah.
And if
Okay.
it's serious enough, they would consider, you know, if there were serious enough comments, they would consider delaying it.
Yes,
Are
yeah.
you anticipating any serious comments? I didn't think so.
We're anticipating applause.
Do you want a motion, Tim?
No,
about
for,
this- About the superintendent's space?
Oh,
But we
that's
haven't
next.
even, that's
We haven't
next
got
up on the
Not
agenda.
there
Okay.
yet.
Coming
Yeah.
up.
So why don't we get into it?
That's going to be a bit.
Okay, there are two,
No, I thought it was,
yeah, there are actually two things that are coming up. One was that most of us know that the Stoughton Cable Access has backed out of the program, but we never really officially voted on taking that out of the program. So I'm wondering if somebody could motion.
to remove the Stoughton Media Access Program from the school project.
second.
Second. Oh, you take that.
Second, Roberta.
Mhm.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
We took the liberty of already removing that from this submission.
Yes. The second item was, and we have a cheat sheet a little bit, we did have discussions in our last working group meeting regarding the superintendent's office area. Talked about the pros and cons, and you see the pros were regards to central to the district and was currently part of the high school, keeping status quo, and then also provides future expansion capability, although that would be downline after the audit, which could be 5 years past the time that the school was occupied. Obviously, the cons were we know it's non-reimbursable, would exceed some of the cost options, other possible cost options, create some functional, logistical, and security issues for the administration, and while it works now, it might not be the best for the future. We did talk about some of the some options for relocations. Carl's design calls for 7,550 square feet. Is that right, Carl? I
Somewhere
think
around there
that
with
range.
multiplier, right,
Yeah.
for corridors and toilet rooms and things.
When we were talking to Joel Harding, and Carl's very familiar with the Jones School, that there's a possibility of about 9,000 square feet available there, even without, basically by kind of programming the area a little more appropriately, you can still squeeze people into that Jones School, whether we do a refurbish or a little more extensive work. That was one option. Another option, obviously, we talked about were modular constructions, and you can put that on any site. There is obviously a cost for that. There was the lease office option, and there was, we had heard, but it's possible, and we don't know what the future, that there's a possibility of consolidating the superintendent's office into a municipal building coming in the future. So, that being said, we're bringing this up for a vote because it is a non-reimbursable cost towards the program. It is We had figured, I think, a number of about 2.5 million for the superintendent's space, in that range, for it to be built out as part of the high school project, non-reimbursed. TJ, I don't know if you wanted to, we'll have discussion now, but these are some of the points I wanted to bring up.
Well, I've hacked it out in the working group, so why don't I toss it out to the full committee for comments. Anybody who, Rick?
Well, I was in at the working group, so I'll go step on first. I
Oh.
have two thoughts here. The first of which is, I recognize that the two principals in the rooms have said that the preferred option for them is not to have. Oh, sorry. It is on. Yeah, to hold it. So I recognize the principals in the room have said that their preferred option is not to have the supervisor on site. So I see a few things.
I don't know if I quite put it that
How
way.
you guys phrase that? Is that an untrue statement? Am I misstating? No. Okay, that's true. And I also understand that there was an expression of security concerns. However, I also heard loud and clear that, excuse me, that there is no expansion capability in this school. So we build it and we got what we got, and we're not going to get any more money to expand it. So by moving them, we create another project in this town. And if you go to town meeting and says, I need $1 million for the Jones School, after I just, I'm building this new facility over here, it isn't going to happen. Don't let me be so fatalistic about it. I think you'd run into a lot of resistance trying to go get more funds to build out the Jones School to relocate a facility. Now, with that said, I don't think it's a bad idea. I've heard some good things here. I think that co-locating it with the other municipal buildings is good thinking, but it's not a tomorrow idea. I think that it is a 5+ year idea. I think that it works where it is. I think that eventually if they do relocate to a different area, you've got that space now to help expand for different programs, et cetera, and you're right, there's never enough space in a school. It just, it gets swallowed up as the, as the operation grows. So my sense is that it should stay the way it is. It's just because you're gonna, it's just a whole nother project, and I just don't think there's gonna be stomach and support for it.
The other thing about the Jones, it isn't a school program per se, but the other thing we were looking at is that in order to make the space, we would have to essentially kick out the extended day preschool.
Oh,
And,
then I definitely vote no.
well, so that would mean that there would be however many parents, and there are quite a few parents who use it, who would in some ways be our natural constituency, who would be hunting around for another option.
Yeah,
for
I
their
didn't hear that in the
kids.
proposal. That absolutely,
Well, when
you say no.
looking at the available room, when you
I
look
know.
at the room that the school district itself is using, then if you look, if we were to say that all the programs there have to remain intact, it gives us a lot less space to work with.
right, and if they've got to find more space, the cost of that program goes up to people because it's, I think we present them with a pretty affordable option on purpose because we want folks to have that extended day capability and to be affordable, so.
We talked about that, and if I remember right, we were talking about, and I think Joel Harding was talking about particularly, I don't want to misquote Joel because he's not here, about accommodating that for in another building if there was a South School project or something. So I mean, when we discussed it, we were always acknowledged that that was
That's
critical
yeah.
to the.
If there,
What's the cost of that as a cost as opposed
Well,
to
I mean, another South.
0.5 million?
If we build a South School.
I know,
then-
but the point is you're still going to spend the money.
Yeah. No, well, I'll
Build the
tell you,
superintendent's
maybe
office
this
or a
is-
new extended school space.
maybe this is as good a time as any for me to offer my own thoughts, because I was, I always came at it from the position that it's hugely expensive office space. And if you, and I used a couple, just my own crazy analogies for the purposes of discussion, is that, and also this 7,550 square feet, that includes sped and IT, or I know I keep asking those questions, but that's the suite now, or that's just
It includes IT.
superintendent? Yeah.
not SPED, because SPED's already at
So-
the Jones School.
So where does IT go if we don't have the superintendent's office suite?
No, IT is included in the superintendent's office. I'm sorry, Miss.
And
That's my point. If it isn't included in construction, the superintendent's office suite, then where does the IT go? Or do we have the same problem finding them?
It's part of the seven.
Let me say it this, everyone in the central office who's currently at the high school would be relocated to the new school if that is the vote.
so facilities,
Facilities, business
IT,
manager,
Right.
IT, there's a district nurse,
Yeah.
there's about 20 people.
the nurse?
No,
I'm
there's a
asking-
director of
Either
nursing
health-
for the whole
Oh.
district.
I'm not asking this the right way. So
Yeah, the health
SPED is in the Jones School right now, and that's a certain capacity of office space. That is included in the 7,550
That's
square
not
feet.
included in the 75.
That
They
isn't.
stay where they
SPED
are.
is not,
They'll stay over in the Jones School.
right,
So it's
right.
just superintendent IT, okay.
right. yeah.
And business
Yeah.
and
Facilities.
facilities.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, say that again?
The special ed central office staff
Yeah.
is currently located at the Jones School.
Yeah.
Regardless of
And they would
this
stay there.
discussion, they would
Right.
stay there.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, getting back onto my point is, if we were to find other comparable office space, which is the easiest commercial space to find from just from a market point of view and a fit-out point of view, which I'm not suggesting we do, but I'm saying for $450 a square foot, is that the cost of the $450 a
400 to-
square foot?
Yeah, or 400, somewhere in there.
Yeah, well, we could certainly find other space, even if it were for a temporary basis. And I know that we've talked about, we don't want that coming out of the school budget. And I think that's the easiest solution. That's the easiest problem to solve, because it's just different sides of the ledger. We don't want to take away from curriculum for something like this. But we could even go so far as to buy a house across the street from the school, tear it down, or refit it out for, what we need for a superintendent's office space. It would still be different than $2.5 million.
Thank you.
And just comparing the other options to cost, 1.5 to fit out the Jones School, which, and this is the last point I'll make, and then I'll throw it back, is that I wasn't comfortable in our offline and then in our last discussion about how the committee was essentially making a policy decision for the school committee that we're not equipped to make. Because we can't decide where the superintendent should go. All we can do is say whether it should be in this high school. And it's one of the areas that it's not in the ed program, having the superintendent, whereas SMAC was. And so if it's not in the ed program, and if that was our primary, determination for the preferred schematic, and if it is expensive office space, I just didn't think it was. And also, I don't know if you have it, Carl, but I think 2 working groups ago, we all looked at the comparison between what it would look like with and without the second story. And I think we all, I don't want to speak for everybody there, we were all of the opinion that it actually looked better without that second floor, or third floor, excuse me.
Was that a working group view, or?
Some of them.
We were just,
Too hung up on that, though.
Yeah, I'm not.
yeah, no, I mean, but
It's a box right now.
I'm throwing all the things that came to mind as we
Box that
discussed it.
disappears, in essence.
Yeah.
I think one of the, I can certainly understand the logic of the point that there is cheaper office space, there's cheap office space to be had in theory. But one of the things in our, we have a very big operating budget, but our big operating budget does not include rent for a continuing cost of rent.
Oh, and I wouldn't want that to come off the top of your operating budget.
But if we
but that's
didn't
easy to resolve.
own something which would involve a cost of purchase, then we would be looking at absorbing rent long-term into the operating.
How would you resolve that?
What do you mean?
If they've got if one of their options is to lease space somewhere else, it's got to come out of their operating budget.
Town maintains buildings all over town. If it comes out of the town side
Versus the school side, you mean?
versus
It
the
has to
school
be
side,
allocated to the school. If the school's using it.
it's real estate, it's not curriculum, though.
It would still be allocated to the school when we did the reconciliation for in-kind services for DOR. We have joint costs, like pension, health and medical, insurance, and this would be a joint cost. I don't want anybody to know what I'm saying.
We don't have to cut it off the top and say that your budget now for curriculum is reduced by X amount because now you're paying rent.
No, but what I'm saying is that when the superintendent's staff and my staff get together to do the annual report on how costs are apportioned, DOR is going, and the Department of Education is going to require that these costs be assigned to the school. There's no way around it. That's the way the system works.
But again, I mean, if
But it
we're-
wouldn't necessarily have to come off the top of her budget.
Yeah, right.
So like when we do a budget now, you'll see a section called joint services. You know what I'm talking about, Rick?
Yep.
This would be under joint services. It would not be in Maggie's budget. It would be in a section of budget that belongs to both of us.
But the bigger the joint accounts, the less we have for what
Correct.
we actually need to do. So you
It's
can
additional operating expense is the bottom
just,
line.
it's just a shell game. So if right now the joint accounts are 25% of the overall town revenue, and then we divide the rest for our actual functions, and then what you could do is move the money into the joint accounts, and the joint accounts become 35% of the town revenue, which gives us a smaller amount of money with which to accomplish our mission, so you end up,
Sides.
right.
I'd like to ask Mike Hartman a question, which I've already asked him, but not in this meeting, and that
Wait, I have to turn my mic off.
no, this one's easy. And actually, Tim, you're going to answer this one too, I think. If we appropriate the money for the new school, can we include in that appropriation some additional monies for the superintendent's office? And similarly with the bond exclusion, can that also include in the bond exclusion the cost of not only the new school, but also a new superintendent's office or a superintendent's office someplace?
The answer to that question is yes.
Yeah, but not,
Yes,
no,
from
the
you,
MSBA wouldn't allow you to
See,
do that.
that's-
no.
No, it wouldn't be part of the same.
Question
It would
or
be on the same
warrant article.
ballot.
It could be on the same
It would be a
ballot.
different question on that ballot.
So there would be like two questions. One is the new high school,
Well, if
and
I
the
have
second.
my way, there would be three questions, because we're talking a public
I
safety.
know what the three.
So-
I know what the
But
third
just-
question
But just
is.
think about this, if they voted for the school but not the superintendent's office,
That would be funny, but
you
possible.
would have to,
Well, if they voted for the superintendent's office,
And
but
not
not for
the
the school.
So the only, and I'll speak for Joel Harding because he's not here, but the issue of was a yes or no was that Joel took the perspective that it costs more money to build it inside the school program. So we do have years to figure it out. Now, all these comments are very, what you guys are making are accurate. The notion that there was at least the thought that if the town never appropriated money later on to do anything for the superintendent's office, and you wouldn't be homeless, that the Jones stool could be actually used without any, wouldn't be good, wouldn't be perfect at all, because I don't think it's even air conditioned or
It
would
might
have
have
to.
window units, but.
Might have
doesn't
has some
air
temporary
conditioning.
units, but there was at least this sort of, worst case scenario where the superintendent could move into the existing Jones School without any
But
further
when-
appropriation.
But so I haven't actually spoken to Joel about this particular issue, but would
Have
that
been
be,
spoken
would that mean without displacing anyone? So would
No,
that mean
no, I
that
think
North
it-
River could stay, or Extended Day could stay, that all of the?
No, I think those
Well, no,
programs.
we think it's possible, Maggie.
Yeah,
Extended day?
yeah, we,
Uh,
To
all
keep
the- all the
Extended Day
programs-
and North
yeah,
River and
the
everybody
comment
who's there.
was, the
Yeah.
comment was
Yes.
from, and I'm speaking for Carl, I'm sorry, the comment was,
Go on then.
was if it was better programmed, there were spaces there. Am I,
There's
Off-
a loose fit right now,
that's,
is,
thank you.
is the polite way to say.
So if you cram everybody into smaller spaces, you can make enough room for us.
Or, you take a large classroom that someone is using as an office and divide it, then you get 2 people, 3 people, 4 people could be using that space. I think there's a little bit of that would go a long way at the Jones School to accommodate all the programs.
So at what point really, though, does this decision need to be made? So does this need to be made before the 16th?
Can I make a motion?
Today, yes.
Oh,
No, well, I mean, because I only want to make a motion because I think a lot of this is something that's 5 years down the road. We need to make a motion whether we want to include it or if we don't want to include it.
But
And it's really not our business where she goes if we say she can't go into that school. It's the school people's
yeah,
business.
I don't want, I'll use the prerogative as chair not to recognize it until such time as we've had a full discussion. I know there's
Okay,
people who want to
all right.
speak, but
I mean, that's my main thing. It's not really our, I don't want to say problem. It's not up to us to advise, saying, I don't want to I don't want to put the district office into the new building. It's not me to say, you have to go there and you have to go there. It's not for me to say. It's for her and her people or her committee to figure out 5 years down the line, when the building gets torn down, if it gets torn down, where she's going to go.
I agree. I agree to the extent that it's hard to make a decision without really knowing all these options and roughly where the offices would go. You know, when I looked at it simply, I said, boy, it's non-reimbursable. It's hard to vote it in when it's non-reimbursable. So the cost is going to come somewhere. So when I think, like you said, well, if we can put it more cheaply someplace else, then I think it creates a lot of wins and a lot of positives. And you know, I'd correct it. I know you were just kidding around that, you know, being a principal, it's not that I wouldn't want my superintendent in the building or that close. I think I've seen it both ways. I've lived it both ways, and it was never intrusive to have my boss there. It just functionally served better in a number of ways, being not just in one school. And you know, I can get into a lot of things, but I won't. But it's really tough for me to make a decision here because I don't know whether there's other options. If I just make it's non-reimbursable, well, the town's going to have to put up money one way somehow to pay for the cost of that, right?
Well,
whether it's in the footprint or not, and it seems like Joel said, it seems more expensive to put it in there than to have it someplace else, but yet I don't know what the options are.
Well,
so that's why it's hard to make a decision. I think everyone's at the same
Precisely.
spot.
Can I throw a little monkey wrench a little bit on here? One of the things we ended up talking about at one of the working group meetings, and when I mentioned this, I actually saw the architect cringe, was that, is this the only design solution for the superintendent's office in this building? For example, could you do a one-story structure on the outside of the building that would be almost separate from it? And that's when you cringed, yes.
We have a very, compact site.
I'm not certain it would be more expensive.
And let me see if I
Let me
get
take a
to
look at the public
one of
safety
these
facility.
overall views here. See if I can rotate this, I'll be doing better.
Maybe we could put the shooting range in the superintendent's office.
The shooting range combined with the superintendent's
I was
office.
saying to Katie, I'm sure there are states in this country where that very thing is done.
Oh, there's
Okay.
room for expansion over here.
Right.
That's
Right.
one of the positive things about the design.
Right.
Yeah, I guess, you could have a bump on the building there, a pimple, of 5,000
He's really cringing about this. He didn't like
on
this
a
idea.
big building there,
Take my
so that
house
you
and
could
move
have a
it.
separate entrance.
Can I move in with you?
Yeah, really, I mean.
So, if I can, I'd like to maybe underscore this point again. I don't know how we can exclude it from this project, not knowing what the option would be downstream. And just show up and say, okay, you guys need to go find another place to live, and now we've got, again, another project, another expense, and this is paid for. It's included. It gives us expansion possibilities. So I understand what the costs are, but I think at the end of the day, when you think about the future costs and all the additional project work it's going to take to make another space happen, which I'm not saying isn't something that we should do. I like the co-location with the municipal buildings. And I got a lot of thoughts on that, but I think at this point not to have a plan. I think you leave it, and then, if 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years down the road, you find an option and you can move them, that's great, and you use that space now, you just swallow it into the program because you know you will need it at that point. And it's there and it's built and it's paid for, or on track to be paid for.
I guess if I can interject, from my perspective, I happen to believe the alternatives are cheaper. I question how can we go in good faith to the voters with $2.5 million that we know is not reimbursable at the same time when we're looking at coming back probably 15 months from now for a new elementary school, and we're talking about potentially redoing the armory, none of it reimbursable, and building a public safety facility, none of it reimbursable. To me, it's not good faith with the voters.
What's the school committee's view on this?
Well, I was saying to keep it in there only because I thought that the extended day program was going to get compromised, and I wasn't willing to go forward with that. But I'm hearing now that it would not be
I think it's
compromised?
feasible, that extended day and the
And North
And-
River.
and the
This is very
preschool,
important relationship.
North River.
North River, the collaborative that
As
is now
Joel
running
points
our.
out, with North River, they take up so many parking spaces. There might be an issue with the parking to need to expand it a little bit. But inside the building, I think all those uses can fit. in the
Although it would
Jones
have,
School.
then it would have to be, spend some money reconfiguring the inside of the
A
building.
little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
but would it be 2.5 million?
No.
No, I
Not
think
likely.
we all generally feel that we wouldn't spend that
Right.
much. in there. But I think we feel that way.
So, what does that do for you guys?
Well, for me, I don't know about my other board members.
I don't know that you guys have taken it up as a topic of discussion, have you?
No,
Well, we kind of discussed it
A little bit, but.
not wholeheartedly.
No, and they never took a vote. With information at the time, I think it was, the committee seemed supportive of putting it into this project.
Yes.
But we didn't have as extensive a conversation
It's
as
kinda
this
hard
has
to
been.
actually make a decision when you don't have the,
Right.
where,
Okay.
Every conversation has come to, there is no concrete plan B except for we'll have to have one.
And that's my point.
That's the only
and I
thing.
get
But
nervous because, I mean, our track record for doing things very well.
Pushing things down the road with no plan,
Yeah.
doesn't happen here.
Mine? Yes.
absolutely.
But
No, it
it's-
says red.
It's on though. It's red, but it's on.
Yeah, some of them,
That means your battery's dead.
But I'm doing what I'm supposed to.
right.
Did a good job.
There's a light.
Well, the
I'm
only
gonna ask
thing,
Julie.
Oh.
Does her opinion matter?
Yes, her opinion does matter.
So, I was, like Mike has already said, I would restate in a different way Rick's original comment. But, so that's one.
Sugarcoat it now?
That's one consideration. I have a very transparent relationship with Maggie, so she knows where I
Yeah,
stand on it.
I do.
But, and I was concerned about the extended school day that we have when Katie brought that up at the original meeting. But I really see where it's located right now as a huge burden on my high school staff, because the superintendent's office does have quite a few visitors during the school day. Some non-public school members, some are just community members who are coming in for working papers or whatever else the community sees the need to come into the high school building for. So I see it as a huge burden for my high school staff, who will now have to worry about signing in guests and getting the escorts up to the third floor for the superintendent's office. I see it as a security risk, as where it's located on top of that. And I don't really see it as expandable space, although I've looked at the way the suite is. I mean, it is expandable space because it's space and we can recreate it, and there is a program we could potentially put in there should that ever become the situation. But it's been explained to me that that's 5-6 years down the road. It's not
About 4 classrooms.
right, and it's not something that would be immediate. And then the bigger selling point at the working group meeting for me was when they said that the plan B, whatever plan B might be, will be substantially less money than what it costs to put it in that new high school building. And I know that cost has always been a factor here, and it's something that this committee talks about quite extensively. And it has to weigh into this decision just like it has the whole process. And if we can give it to the townspeople for less, then I think that's the option that we should present to them.
Well, you make an interesting point, Julie, about the fact that it could be used as expandable space. Let's say that 5 or 6 years after the school is built, you want to expand into that space. The superintendent of schools and their staff is now going to have to move somewhere else. So talking about kicking the can down the road, they still have the problem. On the other hand, if they relocate to somewhere that they know they're going to be for a long time, that might be, in my opinion, a better solution. I don't see this as expandable space. I think if you end up using that for expandable space, you're still stuck with the problem of what do you do with the superintendent of schools and her staff.
And Joel at the meeting, he's pretty confident along with Carl that the Jones School has enough space for all 3 uses.
Well, let me take issue with that, because now you're transferring the security problem to the Jones School.
But the way the Jones is, they could have their
They'd have-
separate entrance.
They'd have separate entrance
Have the
direct from the
separate
parking
entrances,
lot.
is cut our understanding.
The building
Okay.
is long and low and.
You still have
is-
undesirables potentially in the children's school. So,
So my favorite option, really, is
Yep.
buying the houses across the street. That's my favorite, but I don't know if that's an option.
Have your chance, go with
Yeah.
that's right.
Uncle's house.
I'm waiting for the armory.
Because I would love to have the superintendent's office close by, on the same campus even. Because I do have a lot of issues that it just makes it easier to talk to and have that quick communication.
Actually, Joel Hardney and I were talking about that, and when we were talking about the idea about getting the modular construction, he said they already put modular construction already at the
Middle
middle
school.
school,
You can see them a little
Okay.
bit right there.
right there. So theoretically, you could add on to the middle school, or you could go over to, I want to say the West School, that's the one in the back. You
West.
could maybe put modular construction there, and you would be on the same campus, but
Modular
Put you right in the middle of the field,
construction.
Meg.
I know it.
Between
The
all those
plywood, listen,
football fields.
is
duck
the
really quick?
space, is the superintendent's space located over the auditorium?
no.
Could it be, because then it could become balcony seating,
Ah,
the auditorium?
Still got to get rid of the
For
superintendent.
me, if there was really a concrete idea from the town, school committee, people in the school as to where to relocate it, and everyone felt pretty good about it, for me, it'd be a no-brainer just to go that route.
I agree.
I'm still hesitant. I mean, I have a strong opinion in that direction I just stated, but I just, right now, I wouldn't know what to do. We don't
I agree
really
with
know
that.
where we're putting it, you
Oh.
know, so it's hard to.
The architect and Joel Harding both seemed to come to the conclusion they could fit everything into the Jones School, although I personally haven't been there, okay?
Yeah, I don't. I
Okay, so I have to take,
defer to the people that know.
I have to defer to both Carl and Joel on whether or not that can be done. The question that came up also is from Rick, which I thought was a good question, is how do we fund it? Okay,
You have
so,
to go back to the taxpayers for a separate funding, which will take away from the things the school's trying to do anyways. You want new school programs, you're gonna be competing with retrofitting
Can I ask a
superintendent
question?
space.
Is the extra $2 million for this office going to be a really big sticking point? Or are people just thinking, you know, we're getting, you know,
you want to
the
get,
superintendent's office
It is.
in this.
You have to look at it from the point of good faith with the voters, you know, and it's like Julie said, you know, the idea's been cost. We have major construction that needs to be done. We have substantial construction right now going on both the town side and the school side within 2.5, which really negatively impacts my ability to budget and fund town services. You know, and to me, while, you know, over a 20-year debt, will $2.5 million make much difference? Not on that debt, but when you're coming back for probably $40 million for a new South School, or potentially $50 million, $25 million for a public safety facility, and somewhere between $5 and $6 million to rehab the armory so it can be used, you know.
But going for 1.5 million to put it someplace else is.
As opposed to 2.5 here, you tell me as a taxpayer, you want to pay that extra $1 million?
No. But you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
think sometimes if it's wrapped in a project, sometimes people.
On a
They don't really-
$126 million package program, just
It's
remember
like the
that.
technology's wrapped in the project. You know, if you bought all that technology separately, people would probably hesitate, but because it's wrapped in.
It is, but my experience at town meeting has been, and actually with the finance committee, even when Rick was chairing the finance committee,
that's that good or
is
bad.
what's reimbursable and what's not reimbursable. That's what the focus is going to be on.
Well, it's that, and it's like I said, you come back to town meeting and you say, I need $750,000 for superintendent space over at the Jones School, because there's gonna be cost to do that, and you're gonna cram everybody in, and then the schools are gonna want windows from someplace else, or they're gonna want other capital projects that are going on, and this will now compete with that. They won't get educationally focused capital funding because they're now funding the superintendent's new build-out.
EJ?
You had a
To-
question.
To that point, Rick, would there be a greater comfort level if this could be resolved by town meeting, so you don't have to come back to town meeting? We may not have the answer now, but what if we had the answer in 2 months?
We need a decision now, though.
I understand, we, the building committee need a decision now, but the voters don't need a decision till the spring.
Well, but if you're gonna put an article in town meeting to fund the superintendent's office,
Well, to fund the full project.
you know, well, the full project, my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen is that we convene a special within the annual to deal with this.
That's a good idea.
Because of when we have to close the warrant.
Exactly.
And then I have the same concern with this, you know, the selectmen have to close the warrant roughly right around Valentine's Day, and unless you create a special, you can't get anything new in under our charter after the second Tuesday of February.
Right.
Can't be part of this.
If we could get this
whatever's
resolved by then to be on the
question has to
ballot
deal with that.
simultaneously, isn't that
from the MSBA.
addressing the issue of, you know, people voting for something that they're
But if they say,
uncertain about?
let's say they say no, now you have to go back and have new plans drawn, right?
Potentially, if it's going back in this building.
Yeah.
But
No. Or you're saying take it out and let the voters decide? And I would say leave it in and let the voters decide.
I don't know if you can really do that.
I don't think
if
you
the
can.
consensus is to take it out, but the nervousness is we don't know where it's going yet, and we think the Jones could work, we could resolve the fact that the Jones will work in January and February, so that you do have an answer simultaneously with the new high school on the Springtown meeting warrant.
No, I agree with you, but I think what everybody's kind of talking about here, on a special town meeting, if we're talking about 3 appropriations on the ballot, and one of it is $750,000 for a superintendent's office, maybe that'll get through town meeting, but we don't have to go through debt exclusion on that, do we, Mike?
You don't, and my hunch is that if it went through, when the school brought in several $1 million worth of accelerated repairs, which are still undergoing,
Right.
all within 2.5, the only controversy was whether or not those articles should be petitioned or sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. They went through town meeting with virtually no discussion. It was a slam dunk.
Okay.
And I think that if this was within 2.5, and we might be able to absorb $750K within 2.5, it probably would be a slam dunk.
If that's what it was.
I would tell
But, you know, this
yeah.
is a 1931 building, and you know how it is when you start to take apart a 1931. It's like, oops, we didn't know that was there.
I don't
Ooh,
think
that's a problem.
750,000 would.
Well, we're just tossing a number around, I agree.
I will
Somebody
tell
just
you
threw
that
that
the
out.
finance
The
committee.
number that we should, though, relative to it being in the high school, just looking at the numbers we're carrying, the numbers we should be thinking, it's closer to 3 million, not 2 million. Because I just did the math of the square
2.5
foot.
to 3 million. I
Yeah,
think.
it's 2.7 million on a
Yeah.
dollar for the actual building square foot.
When you'd have a nice space with all the security problems
wanna
that
point that.
Julie
I've always
is a
used
little
3
worried
now.
about.
Well,
Have it in?
one of the things that's going to happen is somebody is going to ask, what is the tax impact of just that $3 million?
So we're getting questions at the board right now on how we're going to pay for this. People at the Board of Selectmen are right now trying to configure our future budgets so that, or our future revenue, so that we can allocate it towards paying for a project that I think people have a visceral reaction to.
So I want to go on the record as saying, I think it's a horrible idea. I
Well,
will
which-
say that
which
to the
one?
Board of
There were-
Selectmen.
there were two
The
of them.
one of dedicating our new growth to a building
We
fund.
were talking about that earlier. That of the two, that's the one that I found more appetizing. I'd like to hear your thoughts because actually. So anyway, any other comments?
Can I ask a question? And I might have already asked this. Does the superintendent's office have to be on the 3rd floor so it wouldn't impact?
That's my,
Well,
that's what I was talking about, yeah.
well, that was the thought about
That's-
relocating it.
it's the
as
same thing.
possible.
Yeah,
The thought is moving it somewhere else as a bump
it's
out on the
tricky
building.
to get
or
it on
do
the
something
first
else.
floor, though. In the high school, so many things want to be on the first floor at the high school and have direct access at grade, everything related to the auditorium and the stage and those spaces. And we've already got the gym and the spaces, the locker rooms under that.
Yeah.
The administration needs to be by the front door, the cafeteria and the kitchen, the loading dock. So the first floor, space is precious in that sense.
Well, Carl,
That's why we need a
don't-
bigger auditorium?
Yes, don't give up, don't give up.
Gotta get that, don't give up on that one.
Couldn't the 3rd floor offices, though, have their own entrance? A door that simply goes up a set of stairs that they don't need?
Sort of.
That's pretty complicated.
You would not be
'Cause-
handicap accessible.
You need an elevator.
Elevator.
You need a
and-
separate elevator
Probably
that's
2 ways out.
two ways
That's
out.
awesome.
That's got-
You know,
Carl,
Two
what
ways
about?
out, but one way in.
Carl,
fire pole.
this, I think there's something else we talked about. The area that we originally had allocated for SMAC, that was too small to be converted to a
And
superintendent's
that was on the second floor, and that was a security concern too,
as well.
Okay.
of trying to get that to work.
So the only way it really works most efficiently, better in this building, is if it's on the first floor with its own entrances.
Right, I guess so.
Or on the third floor with its own entrance, if that could be workable.
Hey.
But
So
But
if you,
The other thing to keep in mind too, though, if it is going to serve as future expansion space, then where are those future classrooms going to be? If it's on the first floor and segregated, then it doesn't really work as future classrooms, because then the classrooms are segregated.
Well, see, from my own
Okay.
my own personal opinion is that this, I don't think of this at all as future classroom spaces. Okay, I think of it as the superintendent's office, and it's going to always be the superintendent's office. I think it's not a good idea for us to think that we can throw them out 5 or 6 years later. Okay, 3 or 4 years before you retire, probably. Okay, and throw them out and say, well, you know, we want to take this. The design that you have there, which I like a lot, you know, if we have to, you know, if you get a really big bump in students, like about 300 or 400, I don't know if that's really going to happen, but if that happened, you have the capability of adding on the extra classroom spaces in a pod. And that's fine. That's the way I would see it going. But personally, I don't think that we can think of this at all as extra classroom space. It's either the superintendent's office or it isn't. One or the other.
And I don't mind,
Well, it's a pretty large resource space.
I make a motion now.
I don't mind not being in that building. That's certainly, no, the thing that has concerned me is that any Plan B has been absolutely 100% too vague. Well, okay, so the Jones School, I could certainly see that as being a possibility. I mean, it's a building we own, and there are a lot of things about it that could potentially make it work. But putting it as a third question, or putting it on I think it's confusing to people to put a question, do you want a debt exclusion for a high school? And, oh, by the way, do you want this other little debt exclusion or this other? To have the two things as a vote on the same ballot seems a very, very poor idea.
I don't think we'll need
I
to
don't
put
know
that
how
on
you
the ballot,
propose
though.
a school without telling the voters what the solution is for this.
Well, but we can't, though. All we can do
Then
is
I
say
would say
whether
that
it's
you
in or out.
cannot propose a solution that doesn't include this.
I think, you know, it's for the school committee to decide as a policy matter where the superintendent's office should be or could be. And it probably takes more than just one meeting of study, for sure. But for this committee and what we're going to propose to MSBA, in or out is our only question. And that we went to the extra mile to actually suggest, and I think that's how we actually posed it when we discussed it, is we'll suggest that there are other options to look into, but we can't solve it.
Let me ask a question for Tim, okay? If we take out the superintendent's office and we go forward with that, and then we get to the point where everything gets funded and so forth and so on at the end of schematic design, if at that point in time we decide to put it back in again, is the MSBA going to say, forget it, we're dropping the whole thing, or will they allow us to actually do the add onto the building after, say, the PFA is done?
No, I don't think, no.
Okay.
I mean, I'm saying that because we haven't approached any of these questions, but based on past experience, and Carl, if you want to contribute, or Scott, or Dom, based on past experience, they're very, you need to make these decisions and they don't want you to come back on them.
Okay.
Is that, I mean, does you feel
Yeah,
differently?
you know, I'm thinking, not so much if we were to add it back into the building, but what if we were to add it back into the campus somewhere, as Joel's talked about, a modular building. It's roughly this big, we're talking, one tennis court. Not that I'm suggesting eliminating tennis court, but,
Well, don't you have
there
a
may
spare
be
court space right there?
maybe a space on there that it could be part of the project
That could be the
construction,
net.
but it's not literally part of the building. MSBA, and you could then identify the cost
Yeah.
of that pretty easily as a
Well,
freestanding building.
to the
So-
point, I guess there is a point of putting it
right
right there,
there.
a modular
Yeah.
building right there. And you're right, if it was part of, I think if it was part of the project, not like distant away, but part of the project, we could get it as part of the vote.
So that would be, the appropriation would include not only the school, but this little separate building that's just off to the side, like a storage shed.
Well, is that going to be
We have
less
little
than that?
buildings
Is that
here,
going to be
you
less
can't
money?
quite see them, but there's some.
If you did I think if you did a modular project, it would be less, a modular building would be less. If we designed a building consistent with the school, like an architecturally consistent conventional building, that would probably be more money than having it as part of the school. But I think if we did a modular,
A shed.
modular,
Hut.
Well, no.
An aluminum garage, that would be cheap. I get
I
it.
think that little tiny house is at
Actually-
the library, right?
Tom was showing me pictures of some modulars.
That's
that-
actually
the modulars are pretty nice.
I understand what you're talking about.
Modulars.
Have they?
They're really nice.
My frame of reference
I
is
think
the
it
middle
could be.
school,
Yeah.
I know, but
and
there
it's
are-
horrible.
You know, you're
I think it would be
looking at
less.
between
Surprised.
600 and 700K for a new model.
I think
I'd be all in favor of that if the facility was right. I'd be 1,000% behind that idea. Couldn't package it.
I think the better frame of reference would be the old Charms wing on the East Elementary School in Sharon,
Oh, I know what you mean.
okay? Because that's a modular, and that actually came out pretty nice. Okay, and it's got that faux brick on the outside, so it kind of sort of blends. Oh, come on.
Well, some of the modulars are very nice. I mean,
Jesus,
they're
It's
dirty
sort of
building.
brick,
But that is a
almost
possibility.
brick.
That's not bad.
What's that, Carl?
I guess
What was
that's
that?
why we,
You could put a modular building in, and I think the MSBA would be okay with that, because it's already in the school,
I like that idea.
I like that idea, too.
and probably be less money.
There we go, make a motion.
Can we put a,
The modular,
can we put a barbed wire fence around it?
And then
I don't know.
you could still study the option of putting it to the Jones School
Right,
and delete that from this.
right. You can always delete.
so theoretically, we could
Wouldn't
make the
be upset.
modular building part of the contract for the entire school, theoretically?
What's that?
We could make the modular building as part of the contract for the
Package.
entire school? We would
You know,
could
what
do
I
it
would,
that way?
what I think is an
I don't think you
idea,
literally bid it that way.
what I think is an idea to get
Well, if you
the,
had a CM, you could, I guess. Because obviously they're going to sub it to William
Yeah.
Scotsman or.
Oh, yeah,
Triumph
yeah.
or-
Triumph, yeah.
I think what would be a good idea, though, and what might be a way to look at this, is to plan on it as being a modular in that spot. So we carry the money in the budget now. I think the MSBA would allow that to be voted as an article in May,
It's part of the article.
as one article. And then if a decision was made between now and then to pull it out, I don't think they care if you take it away, but the money would at least be appropriated, and I don't think that would be,
And it would be,
you could spend it somewhere
it
else.
would be less money than building it into the building.
I would like to
Yeah.
make that motion.
Oh, no, wait a minute, she wanted to make the motion.
No,
I want to
no,
steal her
that
thunder.
wasn't- No,
I'll
because
second it.
So made.
I still don't,
I would like to make a recommendation, a motion, that we adopt this project, less the superintendent's and her support staff space, however, with the condition that there is separate space on the same campus, on the same footprint, in modular design, or however to be designed, but not, of course, at the same cost per square footage, because you're not including all the design elements, so it would be more cost feasible
It's a long motion.
as one, well, we're on TV, we're
That's
recording.
okay, all right.
Thank you.
And I'll second it.
I can write it out.
I guess when you say on the same campus?
Yeah.
Do you mean anywhere on the campus that includes the elementary and the middle school?
Sure.
Or do you mean adjacent to the high school?
No, on the campus.
could be anywhere in the
No, but I think
Tim's saying it's
I think
gotta be
for our motion, for this purpose, it needs to be in
On
that
that
spot.
All right,
The high
that's
school
my-
campus.
then my
Like I
recommendation
said, I
is-
think, again, later, they wouldn't mind if you wanted to take it away, because I think you can go down, you just can't add.
All right, so on the same footprint as the existing high school.
Yeah, inside the existing site
are you
plan.
putting
The
an
limit
amount
of
on
work.
it?
Was that seconded?
Inside the limit of work.
We have
For
no,
the building.
no way we can do that.
That's
Yeah.
the thing about
Campus.
a van.
not yet, can someone second that motion?
She did, Katie did.
Katie
Can I
seconded
ask
it.
a question
Go
to
ahead.
Tim, Carl, Dom, whoever would know?
Mhm.
Do we need as part of that motion that it's coming out of the building proper?
Yeah, that's what you
It's
said.
part of
That-
the
you said
entire
that.
project.
Yeah, we're removing
Yeah,
it
but
from-
I didn't hear the part that we were removing it from the.
I did.
Yes,
Yeah,
I-
you
he
did.
just
You did.
said
Oh, it was
that.
stated.
It was at the
Long,
beginning.
Rick.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very extensive and
It was
inclusive.
somewhere in the first 78 words. I have a general question.
I'm pretty sure I heard it.
Is one modular going to be sufficient?
You can.
Well,
get-
you can make modular, the modulars come in
It's gonna get a
sections.
double wide?
Sufficient
Yeah.
to-
No, it's not a trailer. It's actually,
Sufficient to house comfortably and.
The modulars that I've seen, Michael, are, you can get up to 10,000 square
All right.
feet office suite.
Be a triple
Yeah.
wide.
They have it in
Probably.
vans, too.
I mean, I'd go with that motion, but I would think there should be a monetary cap on it. Because I don't like willy-nilly, oh, but now we need this, now we need that. I'm not saying throwing you under the bus. I'm just saying, oh, no, we need to do this, we need to do this. So now this,
I
That could
hate
be-
to say I'm not
that could
willing to
be
make a
priced.
friendly amendment to that, so we've got a motion and a second, I'd like to vote on that, and if it fails, then we should go with another motion.
Well, I would say to Roberta, we don't have any frame of reference,
Right,
though,
that's
at
the
this
problem.
point.
We don't know how much the
But
school is yet.
conceptually, I agree with you, though.
because, well, right now, we're saying this is attached to the school, it's 2.7 million.
if it's in the school.
Right.
If it's
that's
in
what I'm
physically
saying.
in the
If it's
building.
out of the school, it's 2.7
Yeah.
million. So why can't we cap it at 1 million?
No, because I don't know whether we can buy modulars for 1 million.
Well,
We
and-
haven't
and
done
you have
that
to remember
research.
In one of the reno options, you were doing 24 modulars for 3.4 million.
Renting them.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a rental.
Yeah.
That was
That
a
was
rental, yeah.
that was trailer
I
rental.
guess
But
my
those were
thought
much
is,
bigger than
You don't know if
7,500
you can do
square
it for a
feet.
million, and then maybe you can't do it for 1.5 million, but we could redo, I'm just gonna throw the Jones School in there.
Why not
We could
say
redo the
1.5
whole
million?
damn Jones School
What?
for
1.5
90,
I don't know.
900,000.
I'm not priced
thank
it.
you, 900,000.
Well, I
So
think,
why do I wanna commit to something?
I didn't
Why
ask
do I
Tom.
wanna put the
But I think,
taxpayers'
Tom?
burden on this?
Feel comfortable with
When
1.5 million?
maybe, like the
I think that was on the
town
high end.
manager says, this is something
That's on the high end.
cash could
I thought
cover.
it was, I thought with the module, it was like 1.5 million.
Yeah, I
That's-
did a rough estimate of $1.5 million for the modular. That's on the high end. That was very,
And that's what,
Today's
8,000
dates.
square feet or 10,000
that
square
was
feet?
7,500.
And it could be
75, well, I
So
think
it
I
would
carried
meet-
8,000
It would
square
meet
feet.
your estimate of what she's going to
Hold up.
require.
Right, right.
But I just don't want the budget to be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, go buy yourself a new pair of shoes.
well, the $1.5 million isn't a bad number
Well,
because
there's-
it would not only include
Yeah,
construction, but
I mean, I don't
architectural
want, I
fees
don't, I
too.
would rather just say target $1.5 million, only because I don't know how, we didn't go out and
We didn't
procure
really
a
price it.
superintendent's office layout. There's not a lot of upscaling you do with these. They're not like, you know, going
pretty
out and
plain,
buying a
pretty
modular
basic.
home or something where you can kind of get a lot of add-ins.
Yeah.
They basically come as these double wide things. They put them together and you fit them out with drywall, and there's not a lot of upscaling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that would be good to set as a target. You do have bathrooms, yeah,
Some
yeah.
Well, it's
Oh,
so
yeah.
close
But-
to the high school.
No, we don't have, no.
You can
No,
have
you'd
them.
have to, you know. But you could say,
Porta potties.
I think, Roberta, to target $1.5 million would be fair, but we just would have, and we'll come back to you once we do more into it
If you're right next to one.
and see what it is. It's not going to be $3 million, I know
mean, I
that.
guess I just
That-
hate the fact
that
of
includes,
rolling
like,
in,
meeting
it's like
space.
buying a house
Yep.
and putting the closing
Who knows
costs
what they
and
have in mind?
fees into your mortgage. You know, you're paying, when this could be just paid for with free cash from the tax, you know, out of the, I don't know, it's still adding more money to it. I'm
Well,
just
it's
saying,
tough
all right.
any way we look at it.
Still have
I
to
know.
price the whole
All
project.
right, all right, well, you made a motion,
But-
and I guess make your motion.
Again, we'll, you know, as we're going through this now, we're going to do a pricing exercise. So
Right.
we'll have a number.
Oh, yeah. Eventually, we'll have a number.
Yeah.
And we'll have a number before we go before the voters.
We're going to have to have a number at some point.
Oh, yeah.
MSBA.
Sure.
Yeah, we have to vote on the final number.
Yeah, I mean, we're already going to have to think
That's
about what
in
we're going to do for Wednesday,
By
but
March.
So you got
Yeah,
all
well, we
that,
go
so-
before the MSBA
Well, we're gonna
for
have to go
cost
on
and schedule.
video.
What's that thing that
yeah,
you do just before the,
open budget, yeah.
whatever the thing is? After the schematic design is done, which will now include this modular, by the way, all that gets priced out by your estimators and your estimators, and we will have that number in front of us, and we can take that number and see it separate within the estimate. So exactly what you said. If at some point in time we decide not to use the modular solution, we have enough money in there, we can take it out and we can apply it to, say, the Jones School. But we'll know what the number is before we do any of that.
So you can take it out.
Yeah, the theory is that, let's say it's $1 million. And at some point in time, Maggie shows up at one of our meetings and says, I got to go to the Jones School. It's the only solution I can think of. Okay, so at that point in time, we can say, okay, we won't do the $1 million there. We'll take that $1 million, which will be part of the appropriation, and put it into Jones School. And that will Roberta, will limit the amount of money we can spend in either place.
No, I
See
know.
that?
I just don't like having rolling in all of the taxpayers, so that's fine.
They're gonna,
No,
they're,
the
it's
cost
gonna
is going
go
to
up
the
because
taxpayers.
it's one way or
No,
another.
because he's
They're gonna pay
saying
for
that
it.
the money,
Yeah, I
some
can't
of that
wait.
project could be used up from free cash. So you're not burdening the taxpayers with it.
Well,
But then
Free cash comes from the taxpayers.
no matter what, it comes to the taxpayer. no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
Tax-
Yeah.
One way or the other has.
Oh, you already did it.
Yes.
Done.
It's already included.
Chairman, we have a motion. And a second.
I just had a question, and I think this answers it. We're gonna have to reconfigure the parking a bit, but
Not necessarily.
No?
Really, you could probably
Put a few
dedicate some
signs
parking.
reserved for superintendent.
Put a widow's peak on that?
And I'll work out of my car.
There's enough
Many
parking
people have
here
done
that
it
it-
before
Yeah,
me.
that
I'm sure we can get a
you could
construction
dedicate,
trailer
Right,
for
like
you.
I
know,
did in the last
Yeah,
case.
that-
that parking.
You still have that itty bitty car that,
No, I do not have the
That's
itty bitty
nice.
car anymore.
oh, you don't have that
All
anymore?
right, motion made,
Just-
seconded. Any
just-
further discussion? All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Me.
Anyone else?
That hard woman again.
8-1.
That's a good
That's good.
compromise solution.
It is.
Because I was counting a
What's next?
5-4 vote if they were.
God.
I won't say which way.
I mean, unfortunately, it took an hour and 15 minutes, but it's a
know.
good compromise solution.
All right.
Just real briefly, the schedule update. I talked about the FAS is next week on the 16th. December 21st.
It's really good.
Julie and her staff will be meeting with DRA. Now that we have the preferred schematic, we're going to be drilling down more to the program. And it'll be in, I guess, 20-minute
very
intervals
good.
of that.
Just can't
30
have
minutes.
braces.
So that's been scheduled.
No, no.
We know about the full board meeting in January. I'll be sending out now electronic invitations for upcoming school building committee meetings. We only went up to the end of this year, and now I'll start to forward those out. We are, I think, we've been bouncing around between 5:30, 6 o'clock. I think we're going to settle on 6 o'clock. Or is it 5:30, Maggie? Because you have to get to another meeting.
Well,
I want to make sure going forward we're going to.
I actually had thought about this, and so for the folks who work here, the people who are the school staff, earlier is better. Clearly, for the people who work elsewhere,
Right.
later is better. I'm not sure if we shouldn't even consider possibly alternating. My issue on Thursday nights is the Pilgrim Area Collaborative meeting at which I am required to be.
That's a
Which-
7:30.
That is at 7 o'clock in Pembroke.
Ooh.
So,
Well,
I mean,
you're
so
not gonna make it.
since you inconvenience people either way, perhaps we could alternate being inconvenienced. But that's
Does it
just a
have to
thought.
be this night? This day of the week?
Yes.
Kind of does, because
Why?
of the other things that, well, can't be Tuesdays.
Right, that's,
What about Wednesdays?
Wednesday's is finance committee.
Well, they have
Hell with them.
flexibility.
What do
Jeez.
you
This is
care
all
about?
a lot quicker. We got the big hurdles out of the way.
Wait a minute. What does the matter if Finance Committee meets on Wednesdays? How does
the-
that affect this group? It doesn't.
I think the reality
I
is
have to
is
go to
that
finance committee
It was
meetings.
the preference of the selectmen that this group meet in this building.
Okay, we're doing the second Thursday of the month. The Library Building Committee will now be meeting on the third Thursday of the month, and that'll be here. And if you end up having a building committee for the public safety building, I'm not sure when they're going to be.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
I'm assuming the library meetings are going to be at the library.
Yeah.
Did you guys, that's what I get for missing a meeting last time.
I
No,
know,
they're going to be here because of the same reason.
I know originally we had 5 o'clock, then we moved it to 5:30, then we moved it to 6 because some people have, but 5:30 seems to work.
5:30 is fine with me,
A little late, that's fine.
but you, Rick.
It's tricky for Rick, isn't it?
I work every second up until the minute I come in this door, and I'm still doing emails. So whatever you guys decide, I'll work with.
If it's
Why don't I just do
5:30, I
this?
can come for some of it, even if I have to
We'll
go to
hold
the
all
building.
our votes
Like I said,
early before you
because
get
sometimes
here.
TJ and I have talked, but sometimes we'll have to make a change, but I'm going to set the meetings up for 5:30 going forward,
That's fine.
okay?
Yeah.
Just to close this. It's,
They'll just force me to leave work.
Oh, you poor baby.
Does anybody want to vote to require Compass to bring
We'll do that, down spa.
After January.
We could meet at the spa. How's
Right.
that?
Oh, that's a great
January.
idea.
Meet at the town spa?
We have a date.
They're crazy about their pizza.
January, I think it's 27th is the
Better people
board
than
meeting.
here.
14th is the next meeting date, January
For us, I
14th.
mean.
A week from
Oh,
tomorrow is
for-
the working
for
group.
Yeah, for this committee, I'll be sending out for the 14th of January, the next
Okay.
meeting,
The MSBA's meeting.
on the 27th.
So
Right.
we have no working group tomorrow?
No,
No,
Working group is
working group is a
next
week from tomorrow.
Friday. I sent a cancellation, and
You send so many
I know I
I know,
do.
he does
I
that.
apologize.
Yeah, on board.
And I will cancel our working group meeting on Christmas Day.
Oh, thank you. I can make that, actually.
I didn't do that.
Tom, can I be worried? I only got one email from you.
I know, I only got one email.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, my God.
I'm not getting the
Level
working
B,
group.
with a level B,
We're not,
the celebrity B status.
I haven't gotten
I didn't-
I haven't seen a flood lately from Dom.
Right.
so-
I think we should.
We're not the beautiful people.
Just,
Well, 2016, everybody will,
I know, I went to
everybody will
one.
get an electronic invitation and an email confirmation going forward. How's that?
would appreciate a Christmas-themed email.
What's next, Dom?
All right, next is the vendor invoice package. Compass Project Management's invoice is for the amount of $18,746, and DRA's invoice is the amount of $32,500. The total invoice is $51,246.
and I assume that part of the Compass invoice includes the estimating services?
That's correct. The Compass invoice includes PMC, which is $4,620, and also the Penny Saver for advertisement of the, that was a big number.
Am I missing that document somewhere?
Money well spent.
It's part of the vendor invoice package.
They paid it so
I don't have one either.
You want me to abstain from
I
voting
didn't
for
get
that
one.
one?
I didn't get one either, though, Dom.
Oh,
so
it didn't,
maybe-
oh, I'm
maybe
sorry.
those-
I just voted.
Here, why don't we just, we can pass it around.
Those didn't go out in email,
I didn't.
or at least if they did, they weren't.
Make this note, though. We should have these in advance.
Yes.
Shouldn't be just passing them
Yep.
out now and voting
Right.
on them. I would move this to the next meeting if we can, unless it needs to be paid now.
Needs to be paid now.
Does it?
Yes.
I don't know what happened. That did go out.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
didn't go
know.
out.
I
We
don't-
sent it to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
is
it
it-
went off to
Ready?
maybe Maureen, and I don't know, maybe Mary didn't put all the rest of the members.
I printed it out and brought it, so maybe I do have it.
well, you printed out, I personally sent the agenda and the minutes, but it comes through Mary Cuppins.
Oh, no,
I don't know, she might have
said I got
sent,
one
maybe
email.
she just sent it to
Okay.
Maureen. I don't know why.
that's what you said.
That's not normally what she does.
I
Can you
usually
just check
sent
on
it
that?
pretty,
Yeah.
yeah, we can change that around. I'll talk to Mary.
And it looks like the architect's fee also includes the amount for GZA, which we had partly approved, the authorization for that expenditure, as I recall,
As a reimbursable.
as a reimbursable cost.
So,
Okay?
I really have to say, this is a lot of money. We should have it in advance. I know that we didn't, I know that it should have been, but we should be able to study this. So I understand that we gotta make a vote on it, but I do so in protest. It's just a lot of money.
Well, I agree with you. And Maureen and I have talked
Disagree.
about this at some length, Rick. And one of the thoughts that she came up with is that maybe this committee should have a small subcommittee to review these bills.
Roberta, you and I, what is it, and Mike.
The B class.
I
Well,
sign
it's-
off on them anyway,
it's-
it's part of the final process.
And I do trust you, I do trust you, Michael. But trust but verify.
We are endeavoring to get them out early, but I think it was a snafu this time is all.
Yeah, but no, this was somehow in our office, it didn't go to everybody. It no went to Maureen, and we should have sent, I thought we were just, as a matter of fact, sending it to everybody,
I
but,
think Maureen was assuming since we had asked that it go to the entire committee, that it was
yeah,
going to.
I thought it had been yeah, so I don't know why it changed this. I don't
Actually,
understand.
I do know Maureen got it because I talked to Jamie about it.
Yeah, there was a snafu somewhere and between us and.
But we'll make sure it
We'll
gets
figure it out.
to the
now
whole
what I'll do
committee. I
is,
don't know why
when
it
I send
didn't.
out the agenda and the minutes, I'm going to put the vendor invoice package as part of it.
Yeah, please do.
And if I don't have it in time, I'll send it out before the meeting.
Yeah, I apologize for this time. We'll make it not happen.
Oh, I didn't think you were. I'm sure it's an administrative thing. Is that polite?
All right, well, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to approve invoice, well, I don't know what the number is, for $18,740?
I move to recommend the
Yes.
approval of Compass invoice
Very stringent on that language.
I
for,
always have it. that way.
the hell is the total cost of Compass?
$51,246.
$18,746, and DRA's invoice for
32.5.
$32,500. That would be my motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Oh, yeah, right,
She asked me and I recommended
yeah,
abstain from this one.
right.
Instead of voting to
Since
cancel,
it's-
it's probably a good idea.
It's all that lavish
Yeah,
spending
right.
on penny saving.
No, really.
Yeah.
The
No, good point.
$259, man, that's what she's going to retire on. So
All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes from
it's enough to buy new
November
boots.
12th, 2015?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the November 12, 2015 meeting.
Great, second? Second. Further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great.
We have future agenda items?
Oh, this is a topic, well, one of the things, we need to talk with DRA and maybe the working group, but we should get a list of the things that this committee needs to, not the working group, but we need to get full committee participation in decisions, because now the design moves so fast.
Right.
Um,
We had a
Or
talk-
we need to think
No
about
full
moving,
rep.
to double
Thank you, Roberta.
meetings every other week or something.
Carl and I spoke briefly about.
I know the Jandra's block rep.
Right, we were talking about getting together on schedule for that.
That was going to be my question. And maybe it's
excuse me.
premature, but in general
TJ?
terms, do you know what we'll be doing in January at our meeting?
Yes, I have a future agenda item for that meeting in January.
I think we'll talk about the architectural
what we'll-
layouts,
okay.
because we'll have some more input from Julie and administration, and it may affect the plan somewhat. So there'll be architectural layouts.
Recap from MSBA.
And we'll want to talk with the working group about exactly how much detail, you want to get into here versus there, but we want to talk about mechanical, electrical, system selection, architectural materials, and site, and sort of landscaping issues between January's meeting, February's meeting, and March meeting. So we'll cover all those topics in those.
So
3
we'll
meetings.
put together a list of things and the meetings that there'll be for people that we can have consultants come in.
Right.
But I think this committee needs to be now engaged with most all those decisions versus the working group.
We'll get a recap from, I'm sorry, Joe.
No.
Did you get all your stuff out?
No, I got one item that was actually from our last meeting, a future agenda item for this meeting, but I was talked out of it. So,
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
okay,
You want
it is true.
you want me to introduce it for you, or?
No, it's all right, I'll introduce it again. We're looking for a short presentation by Compass Project Management on the difference between CM at risk and designed bid build, in other words, Chapter 149 or Chapter 149A, after which we're going to be asking the committee to authorize Compass to go ahead and hopefully make a submission to the Inspector General's office for permission to use CM at risk, even though we don't have to decide to use it, but we have to get permission to use it. So in order to do that, I'd like the presentation for next January. Mike, I hope you and Maureen are on board with this. I know you were. You are now? Okay, good. In that case, fine.
And I do need to speak with you and Timothy. Nothing to do with
Oh.
CM that.
Rick.
Stay after school and see the
after
principal.
class.
On the next agenda item that we have a follow-up on the FAS presentation.
Right, I have that.
Oh, yeah.
And any, I'm sure we'll be sending out an email, whatever has come up after Wednesday's get-together, so. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Sounds good.
Oh,
Second.
all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Great. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
Yes.
Why do you want to leave at 7:30 for a 9:40 appointment?